Yan, hello everyone. Kumusta kayo dyan? Thank you again sa lahat ng mga dumalaw at joined us kanina dun sa, wala na, bulon na. Pagod dun sa speech natin, lecture pala, by the way, natin dyan sa Ayala Museum. I really appreciate everyone who made an effort. I know the place was actually quite small, but more or less we packed the place. Hopefully in the future we can have even a bigger place. Thank you so much also dun sa mga friends natin, sila Joy, Anna, among others who were so kind in organizing the event. I really enjoyed it. I look forward to more engagement and collaboration with our friends at the Ayala Museum, not only discussing Ilustrado, perhaps so many things that are relevant to Philippine political discourse and historical discussion. No? So I really appreciate that. Also, thank you very much dun sa mga nag-greet ng birthday sa ating lola. I mean, she's still in ICU, so we're still praying for her to have, God willing, full recovery. So maraming salamat also for greetings and good wishes and prayers. Today, I was actually hoping to have a conversation with si Lele Claudio later on, but he seems to be busy, so we're pushing that into a day or two later. So let us wrap up this week with having some sort of a discussion dito sa malaking issue over the past, say, 48 hours or so. Because we had a tweet by the spokesman of the Philippine Coast Guard, whom I actually have interviewed, and our interview will be out on Monday, dyan sa Signal TV, TV5. So please check that out. It's a thorough hour-long conversation with the spokesman of the Philippine Coast Guard. Fantastic guy, fantastic scholar, true patriot. And I think with the tension sa Ayungin, we see more and more people feeling comfortable to air out things that should have been aired out a very long time ago. But alam natin, ang katotohanan is when it comes to the previous administration, especially under President Duterte, it was hard to take a tough stance sa West Philippine Sea. In fact, let's not even call it a tough stance. To take a patriotic stance in the West Philippine Sea, because you had the president, right, who openly was saying wala tayong magagawa, or essentially trying to prosecute the case not for the Philippines but for the other sides. And now, of course, to formalize things, may pagka special envoy na siya. so so this has raised some important questions that I think should have been raised long time ago, and that is, how do we make sure na we preserve our basic freedoms, we preserve civil liberties and rights to self-expression ng ating mga kababayan, whoever is living in the Philippines. We're democracy, we're supposed to be at least democracy, that's nasa saligang batas natin yan. We're supposed to be a pluralistic society, and I would say most importantly, we have to guard against any kind of racist, racialist, generalizing, dangerous, slippery slope, rabbit hole kind of discourse. No, now obviously know where I'm heading here. No, now this picture of Tatay Digong actually came to my mind because just the other day, in light of the Ayungin Shoal, we had some people, some supposed experts saying na, oh, itong situation sa Ayungin Shoal, kasalanan naman yan. Alam niya na naman, anong sasabihin dyan, babalikan na naman ito sa Aquino period, or ibabalik naman kay Senator Trillanes. So I saw Senator Trillanes actually posting some explanatory video dun sa kanyang backdoor diplomacy, which, let's be honest, was not very successful, right? But it's one thing to look at the outcome. It's another thing to question intentions. I think Senator Trillanes had good intentions. He is a patriot. You know, he has served in the armed forces of the Philippines. Now, I may perhaps not agree that that the backdoor diplomacy was very successful, because, yes, it prevented war, supposedly, but I was not really looking at war at that time. But, whatever mutual disengagement plan we had with China didn't work, because as soon as we withdrew BRP, Gregory Del Pilar, tinake over na yan, Panatag Shoal. And in order to also appreciate saan galing yung aking take on this, please also check my interview with Admiral Ong. So you can just go on YouTube, type, "Hey Darian, Admiral Ong." Lalabas yung interview niyan. Because Admiral Ong back then, Vice Admiral Ong back then, was in charge of the Western Command. So he knows very well what was going on in the Scar Marshal during this period. So I really suggest you guys to check different perspectives on this. But what I found quite rich was that you have some of the apologists for the previous administration pushing the argument all the way back to 2012. Of course, we have to question how the Aquino administration handled it, but at least the Aquino administration, and later on Trillanes also supported this, they took China to international court. We won that ruling. No one had an illusion that overnight China will abide by it, but that ruling is far from ineffectual because guess what? China is not using the term nine-dash line anymore because they know it's a legal joke. Guess what? The Americans, a lot of allies, a lot of like-minded countries, they cite the Philippines. They invoke the Philippine Arbitration Award to do their own patrols in the area. So they're doing the fight in behalf of the Philippines. Obviously, some of them more comfortably. They're open about this. Some are not. But the reality is that the Philippine Arbitration Award helped Vietnam, helped Philippines, helped ASEAN, helped international powers who want to preserve freedom of navigation and overflight in the area. And I can go on and on and on. So it's not true that it was ineffectual. I think it definitely brought a lot of advantages to the Philippines. So that brings the question to Duterte. Duterte was so good in, supposedly diplomacy and high-stakes diplomacy and Sun Tzu and all of that. Ang tanong is, what did he do during his 6 years para palakasin yung sitwasyon natin dyan sa West Philippine Sea? Now, again, we're fair. We're very fair. So one of the good things that actually happened during the Duterte administration sa West Philippine Sea is, well, I don't know how much I should, credit the "I love China, China will protect me" president, but in fairness, Secretary Lorenzana, who kind of held the line on multiple occasions, he oversaw actually reclamations. Hindi naman reclamation, sorry. He oversaw maintenance activities dyan sa Pag-asa. Pasensya na, medyo pagod na. So let me just pull this out. So we want to be fair, diba? And in fairness to Secretary Lorenzana, he made it clear that we're not militarizing Pag-asa. We have already done our jobs before. So again, gamitin ba natin Rappler? Para tingnan naman, pati Rappler, fair. Di ba? Binibigyan ng credit ang Duterte administration pag may ginagawang tama. Hindi na nila kasalanan kung burong mga kapalpakan na nangyari. So they had to also highlight that because they're independent media. Right? Di naman sila quote-unquote blogger or alam niyo na. So, in fairness, during the Duterte administration, not Duterte himself, but at least Secretary Lorenzana held his ground multiple times. He went there dyan sa Pag-asa, Tito Island. He was harassed multiple times. Siniradio sila ng mga Chinese dun sa katabing isla na dapat sa atin din yan. Supposedly, these are within the Philippines continental shelf, exclusive economic zone, etc. But Secretary Lorenzana just pushed ahead with it over and over again. And they improved the areas. There was no militarization. There was no massive weapon systems, missile systems, etc. a la China or even Vietnam to a certain degree. But at least inayos natin yung mga facilities natin. Yung to make sure na may access sa clean water ang ating mga tao dyan. May mayor pa tayo sa Pag-asa, di ba? May mga detachment tayo ng troops. May mga tao tayo, permanent residents tayo dyan. To make sure na yung ramp, no? Yung airstrip natin, medyo maayos na rin, hindi mo squatter. So, to be fair naman, there were some good things that happened. And I think this was very important because for a very long time, no Filipino president actually made an effort on the ground to significantly improve yung situation. So, kudos. And we're fair. We're fair. And also, in fairness to Secretary Lorenzana, they continued yung modernization of the armed forces of the Philippines kaya kumuha tayo ng BrahMos missile systems, which again is very important because guess saan na-deploy yung BrahMos missile systems? Di ba sa West Command? So, again, we have to be fair. But my problem is that there's some people there who just push it to the whatever kakulangan ng Aquino era supposedly to overlook some of the major deficiencies of the president, the former president himself, who until now, right, we're not sure who is he trying to argue this for, right? So yun yung issue natin dito. Which brings us, right, to the point raised by Coast Guard spokesman. Ilabas natin yan. Okay. Now, this is quite a sensitive issue. So, let's be very careful about this. So, eto yun, si Dr. J. Tariela, brilliant guy, great guy, true patriot, matapang, magaling, palaban, patriot. No question about it. Now, this Twitter triggered a lot of discourse online. Many positive, but also some who kind of took it in the wrong way. Kaya may mga clarification siya, no? So ganito. So ito yung sinabi ni Dr. J. Tariela, the spokesman of the Philippine Coast Guard, who by the way are supposed to be at the very forefront of defending West Philippine Sea along with Philippine Navy. Yun lang, hindi ko alam kung makaan yung intel funds nila kasi ang laki ng intel funds ng iba na wala namang kinalaman sa National Defense West Philippine Sea, ibang usapan na yan. But hopefully the future Coast Guard will get more funds, including intel funds, since they're very much at the front of this. Now, speaking of intel, speaking of defending the West Philippine Sea, ito yung sinabi ni J. Tariela. If you are a Filipino, whether in government or private sector, regardless of your politics, meaning, kung sinong sinuportahan mo, okay lang yan. That's your right. Diba? Sabi niya, defending and making excuses for China's aggressive behavior should deem you unpatriotic. Now, that was a little bit, And then he added, and a traitor to the Philippines and to our people. Right? I think that's where medyo na-trigger yung iba dyan. But again, he made it very clear. Defending and making excuses for. So there's a deliberate aspect to this. There's a systematic aspect to this. Kumbaga, there's a negosyo aspect to this, right? Given current developments in the West Philippines, it is important to show loyalty to your country. While I recognize, and so meron siyang caveat, it's a long tweet. So kung verified ka on Twitter, you can post a longer one. So, andyan ka agad dun sa first tweet pa lang. Sabi niya, while I recognize freedom of speech as an important right guaranteed by our Constitution, obviously, it should not be misused. I would have said, actually the term that should be used here is weaponized as a means to justify unpatriotic actions by acting as the mouthpiece of you-know-who. All Filipinos should unite in calling out China's aggressive and unlawful actions in the West Philippine Sea. Together, we should stand unity in protecting our national interests and pursuing a peaceful resolution to the issue. Peaceful. Again, he's from the Coast Guard. Hindi siya galing sa military, etc. They're just there to protect yung ating mga mangingista, protect yung mga basics natin. They're a civilian agency. Dahil sa West Philippine Sea, ang yaman nito ay para sa Pilipino. Alright? Now, there was a lot of response. You can guess from which quarters. But also from some people that I think had some legitimate reasons to respond to this in not necessarily positive way. So I'm gonna say absolutely Dr. Tariela had the best of intentions. I think he's a patriot. I think he has really some good reasons to come up with something like this. But as I said, this raises some serious questions, right? About how do we talk about the issue of Filipino patriotism and Filipino loyalty, right? Because this is very, very, very important. By the way, also I also want to say this. So there's also a follow-up tweet by J. Tariela, and he got a support tweet also from Senator Lacson Farmers. He also said, I urge my fellow Filipinos to join the fight against fake news and other forms of online disinformation that discredit our efforts to maintain and secure our national interests in the West Philippine Sea. When you encounter such disinformation on social media, please take a moment and provide accurate and factual information to check if they're providing. Not countering the spread of lies online risks allowing propaganda operatives and pretend experts yung mga yung mga expert dyan na walang saan ba kayong tuturo? Ano pong publication nyo? Ano pong relevant publications? Google Scholar 0, 2, 5. Not In the country to successfully disseminate false narratives that serve only PRC interests, if need be, expose these fake news purveyors so that public may know. Regardless of your politics. Medyo next level na siya. Regardless of politics, whether you support Marcos, Duterte, Lenny Robredo, ang laban sa West Philippine Sea ay laban ng lahat ng Pilipino. Exactly. So I'm glad that clarification was made, no? So, President Duterte had his own stance. Ang position ni President Duterte was, ayoko ng giyera and we need development assistance from China. So he tried to justify. I don't agree with these methods, but my sense is that is the perspective from which he was coming. right? So President Duterte believes he can protect the Philippine national interest in the best way possible if he talks softly to China. Some would say too softly, but at the same time, in fairness naman sa panahon ni Pangulong Digong, as I mentioned a while ago, may ginawa naman tayo dyan sa pag-asa. Hindi ko alam sa Ayungin Shoal. Hindi ko alam yung sinasabi ng iba na may deal daw tayo sa China. Actually, sabi ng China yan. But Marcos said, hindi ko alam kung meron man o walang ganyan. Diba? So I don't know saan galing yung sinasabing deal ng China. Can China clarify to us which president promised them what? Alright? But going back to this, in fairness naman, I think President Duterte had, again, we're trying to be fair here, guys. Kaya nga, let's not be partisan. Ang pinag-usapan po natin dito yung interest ng ating bayan. So, huwag tayong partisan na cancel culture. So, just because you voted for President Duterte doesn't mean you should be pro-China. And I understand, in fairness to President Duterte naman, in fairness naman kay President Duterte, he has his own justifications. I don't agree with it, but I think from his point of view, talking softly to China while slowly doing some things here and there, that was the best way forward. And for him, the concern was to avoid war. Again, I don't agree with his analysis, but I think it would be too unfair to right away jump into conclusions. Now, ibang usapan yung latest intervention niya as a non-president, as an ex-president. Ibang usapan. But I'm talking about the time when he was the president for 6 years. So I disagree with the rhetoric. I disagree with a lot of tactics he used. But we have to be fair. Perhaps that was his understanding of how to avoid tensions and war. Although, then again, I have questions whether war was really likely. You can go and check what I've written and that ano kong sinabi. So again, I'm saying that because katulad ni Dr. Tariela, we should not make it a partisan issue. No? Na kami lang ang patriotic, kayo hindi. Hindi po maganda yan. Hindi po maganda yan. Ang pinag-usapan po natin dito, yung interest ng ating bayan, and whether you voted for Duterte, Marcos, Lenny, Lacson, Isko, whatever, it's not mutually exclusive. You can have voted you can have voted for any of them and yet love the Philippines and protect the Philippines. I know for a fact there were many Duterte supporters who came to me and said, mahal namin si Pangulong Digong, sa tingin namin tama siya sa ganito, ganyan, pero hindi kami masyadong komportable sa sinasabi niya sa China. So please lang, tama naman si Dr. Tariela. This is not about who you voted for. So this is not a partisan tagging issue, right? This is not a tatay tagging, I don't know, pink tagging, you know what I'm saying? Unity, Maharlika tagging. No, it's not. Nevertheless, there's some people who are concerned that this kind of discourse may not inevitably or ineluctably, but yun nga, yung law of unintended consequence. Ang fear ng ibang tao is that, and I absolutely can vouch, Dr. Tariela has the best of intentions. He's raising some very important points. I agree with what he's trying to say. But that's the thing with saying things online, right? It can be misconstrued. And it could unintentionally, create some sort of parallel discussions that are different from what was meant to be discussed here. Now, so personally, and I'm absolutely sure Dr. Tarila feels the same, no one is against freedom of speech. We absolutely respect freedom of speech. You don't agree with BBM? Okay lang yan. And by the way, as a scholar, trabaho po namin na explain, no? Explain. So for instance, as objectively as possible, so you say something as a Filipino, and if you prosecute the Philippine case, but as a scholar, you're supposed to also understand where's Vietnam coming from, where's China coming from, where's Malaysia coming from. So if you do that in a scholarly fashion, for scholarly purposes, that's completely legitimate. Not only is it an expression of, is an exercise of your freedom of expression, it is a positive contribution to scholarly understanding of issue. Because you have to understand saan galing ang mga Vietnamese, saan galing ang mga China, even if you don't agree with them. So, trabaho namin bilang scholars to do that. And journalists, in a way, have to do that. But what Dr. Tariela is saying is that ibang usapan na kung clearly ang nangyari dito is some supposed experts, I don't know, think tanks, whatever, so-called, are consistently questioning the Philippines' position. So it's not a scholarly way of saying China said this, Vietnam said this, Philippines said that, bilang Filipino sa tingin ko ganyan-ganyan, pero ito yung ganyan, ito yung ganyan. Hindi siya ganun eh. It's like, ay hindi ganon kasi ganyan. And it sounds very much like talking points of someone else who is bullying our people. And ibang usapan na yan, di ba? And we're not alone in this. So we have countries like Singapore, for instance, right? And you know what's the you know those things, right? You have people in Singapore like Kosikan Bilahari, the former permanent secretary, brilliant guy, who openly said, we have to watch out against influence operations, right? That manipulate public discourse. This is absolutely there. It's out there. You can read it. It's on Straits Times in Singapore. He said Singaporeans should be aware of, whose influence operations to manipulate them, right? So just go on Google, check this on your own. So even a lot of our neighbors, including Singapore, which is Chinese majority by ethnicity, right? Or race, whatever you want to call it, or at least Chinese speaking majority, city-state, they're absolutely clear about this, right? That we have to watch out against influence operations. So this is an open discussion. This is an open discourse. In fact, there's a term for that in political science. It's called sharp power, right? So there's hard power of military, there's the soft power of cultural, BTS, Hollywood influence, but there's sharp power, which is spreading disinformation, undermining democracies, weaponizing freedom of expression to spread a kind of propaganda that favors another country. And clearly you can see how is this relevant to what's happening in the South China Sea and West Philippine Sea, right? Right? So again, this is not a Philippine thing, Amboy thing. Even in Singapore, we have people openly talking about these issues. This is already an open secret. It's out there. Now, nevertheless, we have to also be sure about another thing. As much as we have to have a serious discussion about these things, about sharp power, influence operations and all, we have to also keep in mind that, first of all, being Filipino is not a racial thing, all right? You can be, I don't know, Moreno, you can be Malay, you can be Chinoy, you can be, I don't know, mixed blood, whatever. Filipinoness was not about race ever, right? Look at our ilustrados. A lot of them were mestizos. Mestizo Chinese in the case of Rizal, part mestizo Espanyol in the case of Lunas, Padre Burgos, his father was Spanish. I mean, but that didn't make them less of a Filipino. Filipino was never about the skin color, right? It was never about that. It's not about tangos ng ilong. No, it was never about that. You can have matangos or not matangos, and yet you're Filipino. You can be lighter skin, darker skin. You can be still a Filipino. So Filipinoness was never a racial category. In fact, race, biologically speaking, doesn't make sense. We have ethno-linguistic groups, language thing. There's no biologically. There's no Han race, Chinese Han race. This is like multiple ethno-linguistic they put together under this physical. So you get what I'm saying. So we have to watch out against some racialist discussion, or some would say even racist discussion. So I agree that we have to call out what increasingly looks like not exercise of freedom of expression, but looks like weaponization of freedom of expression to push the agenda of hostile powers or foreign powers or whatever. But we have to watch out against also the kind of racialist, racist discourse out there. Now, Dr. Tarila was absolutely clear about what he meant here, right? He was clearly saying it's not a partisan issue. It's not, obviously, it's not the race issue, etc. But unfortunately, there are people out there who are making it into something else, right? And particularly, of course, this puts our Chinoy brothers and sisters in a quite a difficult situation. Let's not forget that, again, a lot of our ilustrados, a lot of our great scholars and revolutionaries, and had Chinese descent, ancestry. So Filipino-ness is not about being puro Malay or anything like that. And our Chinoy brothers and sisters have made tremendous contributions to our country. And I'm not talking about yung mga big business oligarchs. I'm talking about a lot of small and medium enterprises. I'm talking about a lot of intellectuals, professors we had in UP. Many of them patriot. They love the country. They create jobs. They're democratic. They're pluralistic. Now, obviously, whatever community belong to, there are always going to be black sheep here and there. Obviously, whatever your ethnic background, I mean, speaking of, for instance, yung mga oligarchs natin, very different ethnic background. Sino yung mga pinaka land grabber? Is it a racial thing? No, it's not. Right? So, alam niyo na, di ba? So, that's my point. We have to be also very careful about it. Now, we don't, and this is not the fault of Dr. Tarela. I think he's perfectly raising a legitimate question. But we have to also call out some of the things that are coming out there which I think are not helpful. Yung, mga purong Filipino lang. Or, I mean, To be fair, I understand also the difficulties that the Chinoy community is facing. And this is why, for instance, nung sa Denver incident, you had the Filipino Chinese business community coming out and providing, million pesos help dun sa ating mga fishermen, no? Dun sa mga biktima dun sa Denver incident. Because I know they also feel the pressure na baka ma-question yung kanilang loyalty, etc. So I see their contribution. So for me, dapat very ingat tayo na we don't equate issues of patriotism with issues of race, ethno-linguistic language, etc. At the same time, I would say that it's important. Kaya nga, proper critical thinking is not easy because you have to juggle multiple variables at the same time. So we have to guard against any kind of racist discourse. At the same time, we have to guard against real or potentially real systematic efforts to weaponize our freedom of expression and use our democracy against ourselves, right, to serve the interests of non-democratic parties. Now, speaking of our Chinoy brothers and sisters, it would be unfair to question their loyalty because of their ethnic background or ancestral connections to mainland China. That would be very unfair. My advice, though, and this is a heartfelt advice to my Chinoy brothers and sisters, is, you know, there's no need to be defensive. You are as Filipino as any one of us, because Filipineness was not ever about racial categories or anything like that. That's complete nonsense to bring it down to racial values. I would also add that it would be nice if of or in fact, regardless of what ethnic and ethno-linguistic background mix you have, to be also clear about where you stand on the West Philippine Sea. I think that's also very important because this will also help to dispel a lot of racist, problematic nonsense out there, right? So that's why you appreciate it when you have some of our Chinoy brothers and sisters coming out and reminding everyone the contribution they have made to defending the Philippines. I have met a lot of Chinoys who have served in the Philippine Armed Forces, in Navy. I've met many Chinoys who help defend the West Philippine Sea. Let's not forget those things. So I don't know. It would be nice also, siguro, just to dispel any kind of nonsense out there, to remind them where they stand on issues on West Philippine Sea. But of course, I also understand there are folks out there who want to act as interlocutors, bridge, etc. Pero ang akin naman, you can be an interlocutor and bridge, but at the same time, right? Oppose any kind of bullying tactics against the Philippines, right? So my take is very complex on this because I know for a fact that this is a very sensitive issue that can unfortunately be easily weaponized or bring it down a rabbit hole. So I'm happy and I'm proud that we have great folks like Dr. Tariela raising some very serious and important issue. At the same time, I want to add also that we have to be very careful about not putting a whole community under a blanket of suspicion. At the same time, I also want to add that it is always nice when we hear Filipinos from whatever walks of life, whatever ethno-linguistic background, Bisaya, Ilocano, Chinoy, whatever, to remind everyone and stand in solidarity with everyone on defending the West Philippine Sea. Not in an aggressive way. Not like, punta tayo, sakupin natin yung sa mga Vietnamese. Oy, giyerahin natin siya. No, no, no. That's a tatay way of thinking. Hindi ganyan. Yung, sana naman, wag naman bullying yung mga tao natin. Sana naman, hindi mo kang kawawa yung mga natin sa panatag. So, yung ganyan style, di ba? So, my stance on this is extremely, extremely nuanced. Very, very nuanced. Because for a fact, I know that I've met countless Chinoy brothers and sisters who genuinely love the Philippines, who are great intellectuals, etc. I also know a lot of our friends who want to serve as bridge interlocutors. And then, of course, there's some also have business interests in China. I understand that they also have their own limitations. Having said all of that, we also have to be aware of any potential weaponization. And this has nothing to do with any community. It could be anyone, right? It could be any blogger. It could be any expert. It could be any, alam niyo na, di ba? Alam niyo na this, di ba? Think tank, yung mga ganyan, di ba? Let's be careful also about that. Let's also be very, very careful about that because this is national security. This is national security. All right? Okay. Again, I'm coming into this discussion. I know it's sensitive. As you can see, I'm being very careful because alam ko madaling ma-twist yung sinasabi natin. So my stance is absolutely clear. Being Filipino is not a race issue, number one. Number two, it's unfair to put the whole community, our Chinoy brother and sister, under a cloud of suspicion. That's unfair. That's wrong. Pangatlo, we have to also be vigilant when it comes to sharp power operation, influence operations, and it has nothing to do with a specific community or not. And number four, it's always nice to see our fellow Filipinos and kababayans, and sometimes even foreigners, defending us against bullying and all, and at least making the case for the bare minimums in ways that is in consonance with the Philippine national interest. And by the way, the Philippines stance in the West Philippine Sea is more or less consistent with UNCLOS because we were the very country that pushed for that arbitration case in the South China Sea. Now, obviously, people are going to say, but the arbitration case did not address the issue of ownership. Yeah. So in absence of a ruling on who owns, why should you make the case of another country and not the case of your own country? Because anyway, there's no legal ruling on who really owns X, Y, and Z. But in terms of validity of China's nine-dash line, can they claim 85%, 80% of the basin in the South China Sea dahil yung mga ancestors nila No, that doesn't make sense. And by the way, just to be very clear, one of the things I find very fascinating is that one of the things you keep on hearing from our friends in China is that we had great admirals like Zhang He who passed by this area and our ancestor controlled this. In fact, they have a term like ancestral territory or something like that. You hear from some of the PLA people or something. Okay, but surprise, surprise, actually, the greatest admiral of China was not of Chinese descent. He actually was from Muslim. He was from a Muslim background. Yeah. Now, some would say even from Persian background, right? Or Central Asian, Hui minority background. So again, there are lots of basic facts there that we have to keep absolutely clear and absolutely in mind. All right? And please lang, yung mga nonsense na dumaan yung mga ano namin nung panahon well, excuse me, dumaan din yung mga amin ancestors na Pinoy for tens and tens and tens of thousand years. How do you think Filipinos got here? Right? Right? Some of them moved from mainland Asia. I don't know. Some of them, their evidence to show a lot of them moved all the way from Madagascar to Indonesia and onwards. Just look at the history of Austronesians. Kaya nga term na barangay comes from balangay, and we are talking about boats that are great ancestors use. So please lang, don't use this ancestral argument. So you're saying, oh, you guys are the only civilized one back in the day, blah blah. In fact, even the Middle Kingdom claim is like, what? Even the Chinese back in the day knew that they were not really the only empire. That's why they had reciprocal relationship with other empires, including the Persians back in the day. So some of us who actually know history and have done your assignment and understand these things, right? Yun nga. So this is actually I suggest you guys to check this out. This very interesting article. Yeah, and in fact, the Chinese Admiral Zhang He helped even spread Islam across Southeast Asia because he was Muslim and he was not from Chinese or quote-unquote Han background, right? So, yun nga eh. Kaya nga I don't like this racial, civilizational arguments because upon scrutiny, it's nonsense. It has no basis in anything, right? It's all just flexing na mas malaki nga. But at the same time, we have to be careful because there's a lot of mumbo jumbo nonsense out there, right? That is not about scholarly discussion or not about having objective discussion. No, it's clearly about something else, and you can connect the dots. All right. Now we're getting a lot of comments here online, so please let's not paint our Chinoy brothers in under shadows. That's unfair. That's not right. That's mali yan. In the same way, tayong Asians pagpunta tayo sa US ay natin ganun. But at the same time, I'm saying, at the same time, I'm saying, we also have to watch out against influence operations, sharp power, which is not about ethnic group. It can target anyone up for sale. All right? Okay. Alam niyo na yan. Okay. Thank you very much dun sa mga comments dyan. Ano yun? Okay, so some people are some people are saying pag government official ka, you have to be careful, etc. But KSC, I'm not sure what was specifically wrong sa statement ni Tariela. My concern was how it could be misused or misinterpreted, but he was very clear. He was not against freedom of expression. He didn't point out at any community. I think what he was pointing out is influence operations, right? Which is a legitimate issue being raised in Singapore and other countries. You can check it on your own. I already posted about it. All right? Now, so, Ivan is asking me, please do a live systematic debunking the claims of the local. Alam nyo na yung mga yan, sino mga yan. Huwag nyo na akong pahinga na ako. Alam nyo na sino mga yan, obvious naman, di ba? But anyway, ako naman, mabait naman ako eh. How should I put it? All I'm saying is this, mabait tayo, pluralistic tayo, open tayo, pero wag rin tayo magpaabuso. Yun lang. And wag rin please racist. Wag rin, mali yan, okay? Kasi yun nga, I saw some very disturbing exchanges online the other day. Someone even used the term parang citizens of convenience. Wag naman sana ganon. There's always going to be black sheep in any community, in any family, unfortunately. Given na yan. Pero wag i-generalize. Alright? Because our Chinoy brothers and sisters have tremendous contributions to our nation building. You know, one among them is Rizal, di ba? So, please lang, alright? Now, the next part of my discussion is this. And let's continue this another day kasi medyo pagod na ako. The other side of my discussion is this. What should we do next? Because right now, there are a couple of proposals being thrown out there. Kudos to, alam niyo naman, the other day I posted yung mga rusty pictures ng situation sa atin sa Ayungin. Well, that was probably a few years ago, but it's not like it's a 5-star hotel now. So, yung mga nagsabi, oh, it's a bit dated. Okay, sige na nga, hindi siya ganun katetano. Alright? Okay. But, we know it. If you look at the most latest one that came out just the other day, hindi mukhang maayos talaga yung sa Ayungin. So, I'm glad to see other senators are responding to public outcry over this issue. So, I'm glad. Are we gonna take credit for it? Maybe, maybe not. Who cares, right? Baka mabash naman tayo ng mga haters natin. But you know what, right? You know naman sino mga talking heads, thought leaders. Hashtag thought leader. And please lang, you know, yung mga tumatawag ng so-called experts sa amin, you know, hindi kami so-called kasi meron na kami mga libro, may mga nasulat na kami mga peer-reviewed journal articles, okay? Yung isang journal article lang natin ng South China Sea, almost mag-100 na citations na, right? Sa Google Scholar. Anyway, mamaya na tayo mag-flex. Medyo gabi na, pagod na tayo. But, no. But now kasi, there are some serious discussions out there. And some serious proposals being thrown out. And one of them is what I raised a while ago, which is, ako, personally, no ako against it. Should we put Pag-asa under EDCA? Should we offer it as a potential EDCA site? My sense is the US will not be comfortable with it, and perhaps even legally they don't want to get involved in it because they're technically neutral on claimed territories. Ibang usapan yung sovereign rights. Mahabang usapan, pero pwede natin balikan yan. So, yung mga fishing rights. So, clear ang US walang basihan ng 9-dash line. But that doesn't mean that automatically they'll support our claim over Pag-asa. Although, if China were to agree and we took it to International Court of Justice, we would win over Pag-asa. You know why? Because we have effective and continuous exercise of control and sovereignty. And that's why China is building all those fake islands over other disputed areas, right? Because you have a very high chance of winning if both parties allow, if you had exercised for a long time effective control, which we have had in the case of Pag-asa at least, no? Now, so I'm very confident Pag-asa goes to international court, we're gonna win it. Except others are not gonna allow it because they know they're gonna lose it, right? So, dinadaan na lang sa ibang bagay. Now, but nevertheless, since there's no ICJ ruling, I said, baka US will not be completely happy about it. But nevertheless, I would say, it's an option to keep in mind. And it's a bargaining chip in any conversation with China. And we can always say it's China, or tuloy-tuloy niyo mga ginagawa niya. Kasi, yung argument ng kabila, ng mga ibang tao is, I don't want to call them hawks, but people are saying, we have to seize the initiative. Hindi pwede nagre-respond lang tayo sa ginagawa ng China. And how dare for China to tell us not to do this when they have built all of those fake islands, when we cannot even, and then maintenance lang, medyo anti-tetano paint lang, medyo So, you get where I'm coming from, right? And then there's another development nangyari kanina, which is quote-unquote, pwede tayo gumamit ng reservists. The term that the media use is militia. Uh, I need to dig deeper into this because there's some difference between quote-unquote militia and reservists. No, it's about rules of engagement. It's about the nature of training. My thing kasi with militia is, as we saw in the read bank, there are times that they can act as a cover for crazy stuff because there's plausible deniability. Oh, ano lang yan, hindi na yun sa regular army. Uh, and sometimes they do crazy stuff talaga without coordination with the more professional guys, the military guys. So, I don't know, it's a bit risky. But I think we have reached a point whereby we have to have an honest and serious conversation about what's the next thing we should do. Hindi lang tayo defensive, hindi lang tayo reactive, hindi lang tayo nagre-respond sa initiative ng iba. We have to consider some serious initiatives of our own. That's why I'm opening up this discussion. Again, as I said, personally, I think it's very risky, and my advice is always the same. Even on EDCA, okay, you want to go ahead with it? Accept the risks that is going to come with it, including what's happening right now. But does that mean that we should just sit back and just allow others to, run over us? No. Everyone is doing reclamation, militarization, whatever out there, except what China is doing, like NBA level compared to what PBL level Vietnam is doing. So also watch out for those who are bashing Vietnam to give excuse to the other one. Okay, careful also about that one because there's no equivalence. And by the way, the Vietnamese are not bullying us in Shul now. Yeah, we had something with them back in the 70s. Yeah, but again, parang ito yung anong kay tatay eh. Para wag natin pag-usapan yung West Philippines. Eh, yung ginawa ng US 100 years ago. O bakit yung ginawa ng Japan nung 70, 80 years ago? May sinabi ba si tatay? Wala. Okay. Ang beshi-beshi niya nga sa Japan. So, you want to play that game? Let's go. Let's do it. Right? Okay. So, I just think we have reached that point where we have to raise these big questions. No? Because napupuno ng tao. Napapagod na sila. And you could also say, see friends in Coast Guard, in Philippine Navy. Napapagod na rin sila. Ilan years sila they had to hold back because you had, tatay there and all of that. And now they feel there's greater support. And this is the biggest irony, right? Tatay called someone a weak leader, knowing that this person would succeed him. But look at who was weak in the West Philippines, at least personally speaking. In terms of rhetoric, in terms of stance, in terms of defending West Philippine Sea. I don't see BBM as weak. BBM is doing the right thing. Now, we can debate on the fine-tuning and follow through and long term. I'm not going to vouch for BBM is going to get it right all the way through. But so far, I think BBM is definitely not a weak leader on West Philippine Sea. Speaking of weak leader on West Philippine Sea, we know who's that person, right? It's not BBM and it's not Aquino, right? I just hope BBM will continue on his line, but also be aware and ready for any potential contingencies because there's going to be risk here. Even if he doesn't do anything new, there's still risk here. The fact that EDCA is coming in, there's already risk in that. So the risk appetite is one thing to keep in mind. Now, if you watched the intervention of President BBM the other day dun sa Pampanga ba yan? Diba? Halos ni-lecture na yung congresswoman ba ng Pampanga about, environmental science 101. That was interesting. You want to see more of that version. Firm, informed, hindi bastos, hindi yabang, but firm, authoritative. We need to see more of that. Again, we're fair here. We try to be as objective as possible. But ibang usapan na kung you're using scholarship and objectivity and freedom of expression actually to do something else. To bash the Philippines, to bash our position because you are connected dots. Ibang usapan na yan, alright? But again, please, no to racist kind of discussion. Wag yung mga nonsense na puro Pilipino yung mga... Walang puro... Go back to it. Lahat tayo may admixtures. Some of us just more than the others, right? So, being Filipino had nothing to do with race. It's never about race. And patriotism obviously is about not consistently arguing the case ng mga kalaban natin. That's not patriotism. So to call certain things unpatriotic is not totally wrong, but to paint the whole community as potential mali yan. That's wrong. Okay? On that note, thank you very much. I appreciate it. We got many comments and suggestions. I understand. I appreciate this is a... Whew. Okay, maraming nagsabi you have to debunk the other side. What the heck do you think I've been doing for the past 6 years? I've been pushing back against the nonsense coming out of these people. Just please check out everything I've written about West Philippine Sea, about the arbitration case. Everything is out there. You just have to find it. Find it. Please gawa na lang kayo ng shorts out of whatever. So I've been doing that. Okay, so hindi lang ang Rappler po ang holding the line. All of us have been holding the line here, alright? When it comes to West Philippine Sea, right? Lahat kami pagod. You know, literally. It was exhausting because, you know anong masakit? Nung panahon ni, ni tatay, kung ikaw ay mag-patriotic ka sa West Philippines, ikaw pang itatag na, na warmonger. I mean, what kind of nonsense is that? Right? That's but I cannot blame because a lot of people were, influenced by partisanship, kasi sabi ng tatay, therefore ganun, or they're influenced by disinformation or a combination of two, right? Pero sana naman mag-move on na tayo dyan. At kita natin, yung mga ka-unity natin dyan, medyo nagigets yun na, saan kami galing all those years, right? So, yeah, I see some interesting situation here. Okay? So, hindi kami nag-iisa masyado. I feel, hindi kami nag-iisa. Medyo kabila siguro nahihirapan ngayon. But anyway, thank you very much for that. I appreciate it. And, by the way, no one has a final say on this. Please feel free to share your point of view. Speaking of our ambassador to China, actually, he's a very good friend. Our ambassador to China, not the Chinese ambassador to Philippines. Ibang usapan niya. When I went to North Korea a few years ago, ayan, nag-flex. No, but this is true. I was in North Korea a few years ago. Duman ako sa Beijing, and actually one of the persons we met, back then journalist pa rin, is yung current Jaime Flockhorst, yung current ambassador natin. So, I'll try to contact him and see. But I know kasi sensitive talaga yung issue na ito. So, I don't know what are the protocols there. But let me see. Maybe on my TV show, not here. Thank you very much again. I appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you sa mga ka-spacers natin. And have a good weekend. And God bless and have a blessed Sabbath day. Pagod na, also, thank you dito sa mga kameta natin. Napahaba to. Kasi, alam niyo, medyo sensitive na issue na ito. But I couldn't be silent. I felt I have to come out and shut down any nonsense racist comments there. But at the same time, we have to be also realistic about potential weaponization of our freedom of expression. Not by any ethnic group in particular, but by anyone who is up for grabs na bayaran. Alright? Yung mga bayaran dyan, marami mga bayaran dyan, unfortunately. Alright? Thank you kay Alexander C. Thank you very much for sharing your point of view. Kay Mia Fresnido, sa Annabel Gamoras. Thank you so much kay Norjaline Dalmasio, Neko Tonyo. Magandang gabi din po sa inyo. Kay Mira Minalov, Riz Ani, God bless po. Thank you very much, Michael Uy. Thank you for Ernie Carpio. Yan, si Ernie Carpio, fanboy na ni Tariela. So check out my interview with him on Monday coming out dun sa TV. I'll see if I can do a separate interview with him for also our meta. Busy siya Eden Olonan, thank you very much, ma'am, for supporting us. Naimit Tablado, also thank you so much for your support all the time. Kay Annabel Gamoras, I mean, for me, kung confident China, let's take Pag-asa to international court, ICJ or whatever. They're gonna lose because they have no control of Pag-asa. We have had control over it, right? So it's true that the arbitration case in 2016 was not about territories, it was sovereign rights, about resources, etc. But very clear, walang basis in 9-dash line, and very clear. If we want to take this to international court, alam ng China matatalo sila dun sa Pag-asa. At kaya nga sila gumagawa ng mga fake islands sa kabila to have effective control. This is very important. There's a jurisprudence on that. There's a precedence on that, how effective control, right, sustain over a long time. And in this case, very close to our waters, exclusive economic zone, or within our exclusive economic zone, then you're in a winning position. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. Salamat. Thank you also dito sa kabila, sa mga YouTubers natin. Thank you very much kay JM, kay TRL, thank you kay Gameplay, thank you kay Modua Record. Ayan, daming comments na medyo sensitive yung issue na ito. Thank you very much kay Ma'am Jocelyn Lumberio, thank you very much kay TRL, kay Gameplay Chup, thank you kay Ma'am Victoria, thank you very much kay Carmel, good evening din po. Ay, may mga kapatid tayo joining us from all across the world, joining us from Japan pala si Carmel. Ohayo gozaimasu. Thank you very much. Arigato for joining us. Very much. Di ba sa Japan, akalain mo meron ba sa mga Japan na dinidefend yung position ng China sa Senkaku? Hindi. Di ba? Kung meron, alam niyo na. Thank you very much. Yung mga sinasabi natin experts, wala akong sinasabi ng particular person. Wala akong sinasabi. Kaya naman kumusga dyan. I'm just saying, kung magka-claim ng iba na expert sila, sana naman magpakita sila ng publication nila o anong mga recognized publisher, I don't know, legit, academic, peer review. Wala, purong wala eh. Tinitingnan namin, wala eh. Punta kayo sa Google Scholar, pakitype yung mga pangalan ng ibang so-called expert dyan. Oo. Anyway, thank you very much. Magpakabait na tayo. Bukas is Sabbath eh, so God willing, we'll get some rest. Medyo mag-ayos-ayos na tayo. And also, thank you so much for all the support and love and prayers for Lola and for greeting her on her birthday. I really appreciate it. And I hope you guys have a blessed weekend. And salamat also for those who joined us online, in person. I don't know, in spirit with us kanina dun sa talk natin sa Ayala Museum, kaya hindi pa natin napalit. No? On that note, thank you very much. God bless and have a good day.